What's up, guys? I'm Mr. Second Passport. Today I'm going to take a look at this video that caught my eye the other day on this gentleman here, the Wandering Investor. Really interesting channel with over 20,000 subscribers. He posted about a $100,000 house for sale in Medellin, Colombia, a place I know pretty well. I lived there for a year of my life. Like it a lot. And but I think he's on the right track. But I think there's some very important points that he missed, that he's missing, and maybe he doesn't mind if someone critiques him a little bit. I don't know his, obviously, investing experience level. It seems pretty good. I don't know his bankroll or anything like that. But as far as Latin American investing, I think maybe it seems like I might have a little more experience than he does, just based on the property he's looking at and what he's saying in this video. So let's just take a quick look. A very interesting channel. I'll leave a link to the video in the description of my video.
Little walkthrough really quickly, and then we'll sit down with Mauricio, who is my Swedish-Colombian agent here, and we'll go through the numbers because it's quite interesting. Little residential streets.
Okay, so here's the house.
So really we're in Laureles, 5 minutes away from the core of Laureles, so good location, not core, but still a very good location, and it's this little house. So
Laureles is like a nice little, very middle-class residential area in Medellin. But it's actually, in my opinion, not that well connected. There's a bunch of traffic, and most expats and foreigners want to be in the El Poblado area. And I'll share here shortly an area, if you don't want to spend the hefty prices of Poblado, where you could go that's right next to Poblado. That might be a better choice than Laureles, but let's keep watching.
There are two separate title deeds, one for the apartment that we're going to go see, and for the one up there. So that's another family that's living there.
Okay, so first thing I think he's missing, just by the simple fact he's even doing a video on this property, you shouldn't even be considering this place in Latin America, right? You have to think like a Latin person for a second. Never buy a standalone house. Just don't do it, right? That's the first point I want to make. You know, you're not in North America anymore. There's a lot of reasons why not to own a standalone house, and that's just my opinion. Locals aren't going to want it. It's going to be not going to have much resale value, and even it renting might be kind of difficult. You might have to rent to the very bottom rung of local society if you were to rent it long term, and for 3, 4, $450 a month, and that's just probably not something you want to deal with. On top of that, I didn't catch that the first time I watched this video, but it's actually an up-down. It has two separate title deeds. That's even worse. You shouldn't definitely not consider a property like this when you have someone else living above you, where you really have no community as a go-between you can complain to if they were, say, to make too much noise or something like that, which probably happens a lot in Latin America. So again, I would not buy something where someone else is living above you outside of a gated community, without an association that you can go between.
You really own the property and you can decide whatever you want to do with it. So Airbnb is a possibility.
That's true. Even in Latin America, some buildings are starting to outlaw Airbnbs. So you are kind of at the whim of whoever your association boss is and what they decide. So buying outside of that, you can do things like Airbnb without a problem. But, and a big but, you lose a lot in security as well. Plus, most buildings I've found in Latin America let you do Airbnb, still no problem whatsoever.
This is really not the typical house viewing of Medellin that you see on YouTube. Typically on YouTube, people will show you amazing apartments with stunning views, etc., of which there are many. I agree, there's some amazing real estate in Medellin, but here I just wanted to show an easy, small, affordable yield play, a bit of a no-brainer investment. So we've got one bedroom here. There was the entrance. So this is a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom apartment.
As you can see, it has been recently remodeled, but it doesn't matter. I believe in deal breakers when you're looking at things for investment. And just, I mean, there's so many deal breakers with this. It's not even funny. Like you can hear that street noise too in the video itself. Something that foreigners wouldn't like or complain about if you do Airbnb this. Also, this is important, and there's a lot of properties in Latin countries like this. Where are the windows, right? Windows are important. Especially for North American or European guests.
So we're not talking luxury here, obviously, but this house, 94 square meters, is going for less than $100,000. It's going for $97,000 before negotiations. Look, there are a few things.
Cheap is not always good in real estate. You know, I like that this guy's talking about rental yields when valuing a property. I value properties similarly as far as the cash flow it can generate to me on a forward-looking basis.
Kitchen, which is still under renovation, but pretty decent. Great, Mauricio. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
So this, like I said when I was showing the apartment, it's really not the typical place that you'll see on YouTube when people show you Medellin. But what I thought that's interesting about this, and then when we're looking for investments, we're sitting together in front of his laptop, and I was saying, show me some easy, just entry point, just no-brainer investment. And then you pointed out this house, and I think it's very interesting. It's in many ways local.
Yeah.
But you believe that we could rent such a house if furnished properly to foreigners?
Yeah, for sure. And the first reason would be the location. The location is amazing. It's here in Laureles, just like I think 1-2 blocks away from where they really like Laureles, the second park are. And there you can find all the restaurants, all the bars, nice hotels, and the vibe is really, really nice. And then just coming up 2 blocks up, then you found this authentic Colombian neighborhood where you have like small little city houses, and you have like Colombians walking around, and it feels very like you're not like in Europe or in US. You're definitely like in a South American little city.
And still with all the cool amenities.
Yeah, with all the plazas, and then you also have like close here you have Éxito, which is like a big supermarket.
And when it comes to investing in Medellin, it's crucial to invest in either El Poblado or here in Laureles.
I agree with them on one point there, that it is important to stick to where you think people want to be. And that these two areas of Medellin is where this guy actually thinks people want to be, and it's kind of true. But I actually like one area better than Laureles. Now, Laureles is flat. I like that about Laureles, but it's not that well connected to the rest of the city. It has like 1 or 2 metro lines, so you could be in Laureles and still be a very far walk to the metro lines, and a whole lot of traffic. And it does have kind of a cool university middle class, lower middle class vibe, with the university there, I remember. But I like an area better if you don't want to be right in El Poblado with all the rest of the gringos, which is a very nice upper class area. Then I would suggest next door where I lived, El Envigado. And it's just a cool little area. It's kind of like a small town atmosphere, but you're right next to El Poblado, very well connected to the metro line, not a far walk at all, and you're also near a lot of nightlife in between Sabaneta and El Poblado, and you can kind of get everywhere in the city a lot easier living in Envigado instead of way out, in my opinion, Laureles. So I would choose Envigado for something a little bit cheaper, a little bit quieter, if I didn't want to live in and pay up for El Poblado.
Let's talk numbers. So 94 square meters, 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom. It's going for 380 million pesos, which is approximately $97,000 at the current exchange rate.
This is my second point, and it should be a deal breaker for a property like this. And this guy on the left mentioned that it'd be very easy to rent to foreigners, and that might be the case, but you still shouldn't buy something like this. And here's why: you should never buy in a foreign country something that the locals would not be interested. Locals with money be interested in buying or renting. And here's why locals with money would not be interested in this place to buy, and probably not even to rent. And that is because no parking. I don't see any private parking. Anyone in Latin America with at least a few $1,000s has got that money in a car, and they own a car, right? So you're going to have to rent to people without a car. And if you rent to locals without a car, you're looking at the bottom rung of society. Is that something you really want to deal with? And yes, you could rent to foreigners because a lot of foreigners don't have a car. But I got a suggestion: instead of buying something like this, why don't you lease it? And then with the permit, like I do, with the permission of the owner, it's called rental arbitrage, you could say. Uh, Turn around and sublease it on a short-term basis, and you make the difference in the margin on sites like Airbnb and that. So that's a low risk entryway. And then if it doesn't work out, you just simply give the property back. And often leases you don't even have to fulfill in Latin America. You just leave the property, give them your month's notice, and say you're leaving. And as long as you leave it like you found it, you shouldn't have a problem getting out of your lease. You just might lose your deposit, which is quite often the case in Latin America.
While here in Colombia, the average price a house can be on the market is like 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
Also, a low liquidity market. Very good point. And it just exemplifies or highlights the point that you should not risk it, right? If you're not sure about an investment, you shouldn't do it because there's often no way out, right, in these low liquidity markets like in Ecuador or Colombia or a lot of markets all over the world, and especially, in Latin America.
Low liquidity market. So this is really, really important to understand. I would not come to Colombia to buy, to renovate, and then to flip. The turnaround time is just too slow. And then from a tax point of view, it's a mess as well. So here you come to buy either for lifestyle, for a mix of lifestyle and investment, which a lot of people are doing nowadays, or just purely for investment. Is the negotiation margin smaller on kind of...
I think that's a pretty bad idea for new expats to anywhere to buy a property, because the average expat, I used to have a hotel in Ecuador for almost a decade, and most of the expats I met moved at least 3 or 4 times in the course of the first few years, just because they discovered other areas of town they like better, other towns they like better, other areas of Ecuador they like better, and some even decided to leave Ecuador. Right, so by renting, you have more flexibility in that sense.
Essentially, in a house like this, if you put it unfurnished, rent it to locals, you would get roughly 5% gross. But again, what you want to capture is the whole digital nomad boom that's happening here in Medellin.
Yeah, and the
5% gross long term. Yikes! I wouldn't touch anything for under 12. That's my personal cutoff. We all should have a cutoff, but minimum 12% return for me to even look at it, which is kind of hard to do these days, especially in North America right now with the prices. As you may know, if you watch this channel, I was looking over in Southern Europe a few months ago, and even down here in South America, that can be hard to find, but you can find it if you look. But 5%. In the banks down here, you can just deposit money and make 9. So why would you? I don't understand why you would buy something that makes 5% on it and have to deal with all the headaches of owning property.
It's important when you do that is always like location. As you said before, you want to be either in Poblado or Laureles in order to do that. And Laureles here, you can't see much now in the video, but it's very walkable.
Yeah.
Like it's super flat. It's in the center. Like Medellin is in a valley, and Laureles is like in a flat area in the middle. So it's very walkable. You can walk everywhere, but then you don't get the views. So it's.
I agree. Very flat, very walkable, but you also don't get the views, like you said, or the wind, the nice breeze.
It's give and a take, I would say.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we're at 410 for the total purchase without negotiating. So we're going for conservative numbers. How much do you think you can rent this on a monthly basis? So people who come here for 1 month to 6 months.
Yeah, without promising too much, I'm very certain that you can rent it for 1K.
So 1,000
USD.
US.
Yeah, USD.
So 4 million.
Yeah, for me.
Okay, so let's run with an occupancy rate of about
80.
80%. I was looking at a software a bit earlier today, just looking through the Airbnb listings that you have, the long-term listings, and your occupancy rate was between 85 and 90%.
Yeah, it's crazy. I need to add, it's very unusual, and it's also because it's a house. If you buy an apartment, it's always more expensive.
Yeah.
So that's also why it's a really good investment, because the expenses for this house is very low.
I see this all the time in Latin America. They say it's a house. This isn't a house. I mean, it looks like a house, but you have someone living above you. For me and for most North Americans, that's not a house, but you often see that. I saw it over in Spain as well, people calling this a house, but it's not a house, right? It's an apartment in a house.
It's a bit of an American market in many ways, in the sense that all these modern buildings have relatively high HOA fees, but when you buy into this, you do not have any HOA fees. So not only is your property tax a lot lower, but there isn't any HOA fees. So even if suddenly a lot of supply were to come on the market and you needed to kind of fight on a price basis versus the competitors, how much would the landlord have to pay approximately for utilities like internet?
So utility for this area, it would be around 250 million a month.
Okay, so about 3 million a year.
Yeah.
So like $750 a year of utilities.
Yes.
Internet, roughly how much?
Internet is 152 mil pesos a month.
Okay.
And then you get 120 megabytes.
Okay, 3 quick points actually, but one is the main one. But the first one that they mentioned right now is, it's true. Colombia, this guy has an 85-95% occupancy rate with his Airbnbs. I believe it. In the cities of Colombia, especially since the pandemic, has just exploded with tourism, way more than when I lived there like 8, 9, 10 years ago. I felt like the only gringo around, and I actually thought it was pretty cool. I'm not sure what it would be like now, but I have heard from sources that live there and whatnot that tourism has gone up a huge amount. I've also seen numbers as well. The number two point I want to make is, being an Airbnb guy myself, that's how I make the lion's share of my income across almost now 3 different countries. I can tell you, you have to put yourself in your guest's shoes a little bit more. Like I can see both sides, as the Airbnber and also the investor. A new arrival, fresh gringo without much Spanish even, is probably not going to want to rent something like this, even if it's just for a month or 2 or 3. They're probably going to want to be in a nice tower with an elevator and a full-time guard receptionist, because that's just going to make them feel safer, right? It's going to just feel safer as well as be safer, but it's definitely going to feel safer, and that's what I think they'd prefer, probably 10 times more than something like this, right? And the third point I wanted to make was the last of my main 3 in this video, which I think is crucial, is when valuing a property like this, you should never, right? You should absolutely never value it based on short-term yields when it comes to renting. That should be just kind of icing on the cake, but it's way too variable to figure that into how much you should pay for a property based on what it's going to make renting to short-termers, right? You should always look at the long-term yield of a property, and based on that, it should be 12% or more. And then if you can do short-term with it and make double or triple that or quadruple it, even better. But you should always value a property and decide if you're going to buy it or not based on the long-term yield. I'm Mr. Second Passport. If you like this, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button below, and don't forget to check this guy's channel out. I enjoyed it a lot. The Wandering Investor, with over 20,000 subscribers.